The Dawn of Shadows, a fictional historical novel not based on real events, in the heart of 19th century Europe, amidst turbulent winds of change and the lingering echo of ancient glory, there arose a tale spun from the valor of kindred spirits and the ceaseless hope for redemption. The landscapes of our story spanned the cobbled streets of a fictional city reminiscent of Paris, the misty highlands of a realm akin to the Scottish borders, and the warm, sunlit plazas of a principality echoing the spirit of Renaissance Italy. In this milieu, where history and legend intermingled unabashedly, the lives of common folk and nobles intertwined in an unyielding tapestry of ambition, love, sacrifice, and the pursuit of justice. Arthur White, a man of gentle wisdom and unquenchable curiosity, had long admired the simple beauty of life. Born to a modest family in the outskirts of Ardennes, a city that bore resemblance to a young, hopeful Paris, Arthur's heart was forever stirred by the stirring call of adventure and the quiet promise of a better world. From a very young age he nurtured a passion for literature, music, and the art of conversation, believing that even the darkest times could glow with the light of human kindness, if only one dared to search for it. It was during the chill morning mists of a late autumn day that Arthur first encountered Elena Brown, a spirited young woman whose eyes shone with a determination both delicate and profound. Elena, daughter to a respected merchant whose trade spanned the European continent, had in her veins the fervor of liberated thought and the resilience of generations past. Their meeting, as if orchestrated by an unseen hand, occurred in a small bookshop near the Rue de l'Espoir, a place where ideas whispered among dusty tomes. Their conversation, initially tentative and laced with mutual curiosity, soon burgeoned into an exchange of hopes, dreams, and the shared responsibility of upholding dignity in a changing world. "Arthur," Elena had said softly as they walked along the narrow cobbled lane, the lamplight dancing in her eyes, "do you not believe that every hardship conceals within it the seed of renewal? That the bitter winds of revolution may yet yield blossoms of hope?" Arthur, with a gentle smile of serene understanding, replied, "Indeed, my dear Elena, for it is in the very heart of adversity that our noblest virtues are revealed. We must be both the watchmen and the gardeners of our fate." Their words, spoken amidst the rustling leaves and quiet hum of distant carriages, underscored an unspoken promise that from the ashes of despair, a new dawn would arise. The era was one in which the embers of past conflicts mingled with the sparks of progressive thought. Political revolutions, reminiscent of the upheavals of 1848, had left visible marks on the cobblestones and corridors of power. Yet, beyond the clashes of ideology and the struggles for territorial pride, common souls like Arthur and Elena endeavored to remind the world of its shared humanity. Their paths soon crossed with those of other kindred spirits: Jonathan Miller, a spirited reformist whose ideals were as resolute as the ancient stone of his hometown; Margaret Sinclair, an indefatigable writer whose quill edged the untold stories of courage and compassion; and Edward Clark, a dashing officer whose loyalty to truth forged him into both a soldier and a poet of the battle-scarred streets. As spring approached, with its promise of renewal and rebirth, the lives of these 5 individuals interwove in ways that defied fate. Their journeys would lead them through secret meetings in candlelit salons, daring escapes along moonlit riverbanks, and impassioned debates in smoky taverns where whispers of conspiracy mingled with heartfelt dreams. One crisp evening, in a grand hall reminiscent of the illustrious salons of old Paris, Arthur found himself drawn into a conversation with Edward, whose eyes bore the unmistakable glint of both sorrow and hope. "Edward," Arthur began, his voice soft yet insistent, "the world we live in trembles with both agony and possibility. I fear that if we do not take up the mantle of change, the darkness shall consume everything we hold dear." Edward, adjusting the cuff of his worn jacket, gazed into the distance as if recalling battles fought on fields both near and afar. "I have seen the cost of both war and inaction," he murmured. "It is not enough to dream in the safety of libraries and quiet parlors. We must act, though the price may be steep. Yet within every sacrifice lies the wellspring of a better tomorrow." Their impassioned dialogue unfolded against the backdrop of shifting alliances and emerging ideas that stirred across Europe like a sudden gust of wind. For many, the struggle was not only against external antagonists but also the internal chains of tradition and prejudice. Margaret, whose pen had become a beacon to oppressed voices, captured these moments in fervid prose as she chronicled the social transformation sweeping from one border to another. In her writings, the streets of Ardennes, the villages of the highlands, and the courtyards of opulent estates were portrayed not as isolated realms, but as parts of a greater mosaic that illustrated the enduring capacity for love, sacrifice, and mutual understanding. Amid these transformative times, fate led Elena and Jonathan to a clandestine assembly in a long-forgotten abbey nestled on the outskirts of Ardennes. The crumbling stone walls of the ancient structure bore witness to centuries of prayer, rebellion, and secret pacts forged under the watchful eyes of history. In the candlelit sanctum, as rain gently tapped the leaded windows, Jonathan confided his deepest doubts to Elena. "I fear that our dreams may be as fragile as the ancient stones that hold these hallowed halls," he whispered. Elena, with a steady gaze that belied the tremor in her own heart, responded, "Perhaps, Jonathan, it is precisely in the fragility of these dreams that their true beauty is enshrined. For in every weakness lies the possibility of an unwavering strength." In those days, society teetered on a delicate balance. Political intrigue, fueled by whispered rumors and secret engagements, set the stage for conflicts that transcended national boundaries, yet it was the plight of ordinary people that ultimately became the crucible for societal change. Our venerable heroes soon encountered a host of characters, each with dreams as vibrant as the stained glass windows of ancient cathedrals, and each bearing the scars of history's tumult. Among them was Samuel Reed, a humble craftsman whose skilled hands fashioned wood and metal into instruments of both beauty and utility. His workshop, tucked away in a narrow alley where the glow of twilight merged with the scent of sawdust and oil, became a meeting place for thinkers, artists, and revolutionaries alike. In heated debates over cups of steaming coffee and the clatter of tools, questions were raised about the responsibilities of men and women in forging a world that might rise from the oppressive darkness of tyranny. Samuel's sincere craftsmanship mirrored his inner belief that every creation, no matter how simple, held the promise of long-lasting transformation. Even as revolution brewed beyond the safe confines of their inner circles, the protagonists' lives were imbued with an abiding sense of hope. On a blustery morning, beneath a sky streaked with hues of gold and violet, Edward and Arthur found themselves wandering along the banks of a wide, meandering river. The water, dark and reflective as a mirror, carried with it the whispers of ancient legends and the ceaseless march of history. "Sometimes I wonder," Edward remarked, his tone both pensive and light-hearted, "if the river carries not just the waters of this land, but the very memories and dreams of those who have passed before us." Arthur's smile broadened in quiet agreement. "Perhaps each ripple in its current is a note in the eternal symphony of hope, a reminder that after every storm, the sun will rise again." Their journey was enriched by chance encounters and the gracious hospitality of people whose lives embodied resilience. In a modest farmhouse nestled in the valleys of a region reminiscent of the Swiss countryside, they met Isabella Hart, a woman of remarkable fortitude. Isabella, known for her skill in healing both the body and the soul, welcomed weary travelers with warmth and wisdom. Over hearty meals and cups of fragrant herbal tea, she recounted tales of family legacies and struggles against the harshness of nature. In the simple act of caring for one another, Isabella explained, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the hearth, "we weave a fabric of compassion that no tyranny can tear apart. Every act of kindness is a silent revolt against despair." The narrative of these lives was set against a backdrop of historical events that stirred the collective consciousness of a continent. In the distant echoes of political debates and military maneuvers, whispers of the Industrial Revolution mingled with the anxieties of nascent democracy. The grand boulevards of cities like Ardennes bore testimony to progress and struggle alike. Factories belched clouds that mingled with the perfume of freshly bloomed flowers in public gardens, and the clangor of progress filled air that once had known only the quiet murmur of ancient lore. These massive shifts, though daunting, provided the fertile ground for our heroes to cast their own visions of unity and renewal. In one particularly memorable episode, as the shadows of night had barely receded from the memory of recent skirmishes near the city walls, Elena found herself embroiled in a perilous encounter. A group of fervent dissidents, agitated by the oppressive measures enacted by an increasingly authoritarian regime, had taken refuge in the labyrinthine alleys of Ardennes. With her characteristic blend of courage and empathy, Elena navigated these treacherous passages with the firm conviction that understanding could defuse even the bitterest of conflicts. "We are not all monsters, even in the heart of revolution," she reassured a frightened dissenting youth. "There is light in each of you, light that can outshine the darkest ambitions. Let us build bridges with our words and our hearts, not walls with our anger." Her consoling words, delivered in a voice that resonated with both authority and tenderness, quelled the rising tide of fear and allowed for a moment of shared humanity amid chaos. Their collective struggle, however, was not confined to political ideology alone. Deep within the human heart lay longings transcending the boundaries of class, creed, and circumstance. The budding romance between Arthur and Elena blossomed quietly against this tumultuous backdrop, a gentle counterpoint to the fierce cadence of revolution. Their moments together, whether spent walking beneath the dappled light of an ancient forest or engaging in whispered conversation under starlit skies, were suffused with the kind of sincerity that promised a future built on trust rather than suspicion. "My heart finds its measure in your smile," Arthur once confessed during an impromptu picnic near a meandering brook. Elena responded with laughter that echoed like the tinkling of silver bells, "Then let our hearts be inexhaustible, ever capable of love even in the twilight of uncertainty." While their love provided solace and strength, it also became a beacon for others. Jonathan Miller, whose own past was marred by regret and loss, found in their example a rekindling of his own hope. Often seen in the quiet hours after dusk, Jonathan would wander along the ancient ramparts of Ardennes, contemplating the nature of destiny and the moral imperatives that drove him to challenge the inequities of his time. "We are all unstoppable waves in the ocean of history," he would murmur to himself, "ever shifting, yet driven by the same underlying impulse to transform adversity into opportunity." His reflective monologues, rich with metaphor and gentle irony, resonated with the hearts of those who sought to carry forward the ideals of compassion and reform. In a particularly stirring exchange during one of the many gatherings in an old mansion that had seen both splendor and sorrow, Edward Clarke declared, "Brothers and sisters, in every crisis there lies a hidden chance for redemption. We must not let the tyranny of the moment obscure the eternal promise of human decency." His words were met with nods of quiet agreement and murmurs of resolve from the assembled crowd. The gathered souls comprising inventors, dreamers, soldiers, and poets found in each other the reassurance that their combined efforts could be the harbinger of a brighter future. It was as if the ancient stones of Ardennes itself had absorbed centuries of despair, only to reawaken with each new generation that strove to crown hope with action. As the seasons turned and the chill of winter gradually gave way to rebirth in spring, the intricate web of relationships continued to expand. Isabella Hart, whose nurturing spirit had healed countless wounds, extended her circle of kindness to those who had long been marginalized. In her small infirmary, set against the backdrop of snow-capped peaks and frosted vineyards that resembled scenes from a romantic pastoral painting, she tended to both the body and the spirit. "Every wound is a lesson," she would tell her patients, "and every scar a reminder that we have overcome the trivialities of despair to emerge stronger." Her words, like a soothing balm, carried the promise of transformation and the notion that even in winter, the seeds of summer lay concealed beneath frozen earth. The political landscape, though stormy, was gradually giving way to a more inclusive dialogue. Under the watchful guidance of reformists like Jonathan and the steadfast loyalty of soldiers like Edward, old hierarchies began to falter. A series of secret meetings in candlelit cellars, in grand estates where ornate decorations clashed with revolutionary ideals, and on the rain-slicked streets of Ardennes, bore testimony to the inexorable march of progress. At one such gathering, Margaret Sinclair read aloud a stirring extract from her manuscript, evoking the imagery of a phoenix rising from its own ashes. "Let us cast aside the remnants of old enmities and embrace what the future holds," she appealed, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "For within every human heart lies the potential to forge a destiny that is both noble and luminous." Not all moments were fraught with tension, however, there were interludes of mirth and gentle camaraderie that reminded the assembled crowd of the beauty inherent in life. During one vibrant festival in Ardennes, a celebration where the old world met the new in a kaleidoscope of colors and music, Arthur and Elena danced beneath a canopy of lanterns, their movements synchronized in a quiet dialogue. Laughter, as light and effervescent as the chime of crystal glasses, filled the air as townsfolk and travelers alike joined in an impromptu celebration of life. Here, in this sacred space of revelry and renewal, Arthur proclaimed during a moment of levity, "We stand together as witnesses to the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to transcend hardship." The story continued to unfold over lengthy, sun-dappled days and star-woven nights. In the crowded backrooms of a centuries-old theatre that bore the weight of both tragedy and triumph, a heated dialogue between Edward and Jonathan on matters of honor and duty unfolded. What is history but a tapestry woven with the threads of every laugh, every tear, every moment of courage? Edward asked with quiet fervor. Jonathan, whose eyes shone with the reflective glow of long-remembered battles and lost dreams, replied, "It is our duty to ensure that the tapestry is not marred by the stains of hatred. Instead, let it be a canvas for every act of kindness, every sacrifice made in the name of love and justice." Their conversation, punctuated by sincere nods and reflective pauses, underscored the significance of individual actions in the broader panorama of time. Through it all, the evolving panorama of Europe bore hidden witness to epic confrontations in the corridors of power and quiet acts of rebellion along its rustic lanes. In a modest village market that echoed the ambience of a bygone era, Samuel Reed and Isabella Hart together created a space where art, craft, and healing converged to heal the deep fissures of social discord. Their modest establishment, adorned with hand-carved signs and warm, glowing lanterns, soon became a refuge for tired souls and a forum for spirited debate. "We are but humble gardeners in a world overrun by wild flowers," Samuel mused during one of his long meditative walks, "and yet each seed we plant in the fertile soil of empathy may one day yield a forest of kindness." Even as the broader currents of revolution and reform altered the political map of Europe, the personal journeys of our heroes served as a constant reminder of the sublime interplay between fate and free will. Elena, now deeply entrenched in the causes she believed so fervently in, embarked on a journey to rally support from communities afar, traveling by horse-drawn carriage along winding roads flanked by vineyards and ancient ruins. Along the way, she encountered enthusiastic citizens, anxious at the prospect of change yet buoyed by the promise of a fair and just future. In the quiet moments during her travels, she reflected on the serendipity that had brought her and Arthur together, feeling that their union was emblematic of a broader harmony that could one day heal a fractured society. Arthur, for his part, remained the silent thinker and gentle orator whose optimism served as a beacon during the dark hours of political uncertainty. Frequently joining the reformers in small-town assemblies and large-scale public rallies alike, he championed ideas of unity and reconciliation. "Let us not be defined by the bitterness of the past," he proclaimed in one impassioned address before an assembly in a grand rotunda reminiscent of the academies of classical antiquity, but rather by the luminous prospects of a future built on empathy, shared understanding, and the relentless pursuit of truth. His words, delivered with the grace of a seasoned storyteller, kindled hope and sparked the embers of change in the hearts of those who listened. As the seasons cycled once more, the tapestry of intertwined fates and shared dreams grew ever richer. The once murky boundaries between friend and foe began to dissolve, replaced instead by a network of mutual respect and sincere vulnerability. Even in the midst of pressing crises, the characters learned that each human being possessed an innate capacity for love that transcended the limitations of circumstance. In a memorable scene that unfolded on a rainy afternoon in a secluded courtyard encircled by ivy-clad stone, Jonathan and Margaret found solace in a quiet conversation over steaming cups of spiced tea. "I have often wondered," Margaret observed with a wistful smile, "whether the struggles we endure are not, in themselves, the very crucibles that refine our humanity." Jonathan, gazing at droplets racing along the worn cobblestones, agreed quietly, "It is true that our scars tell tales of sorrow, but they also map the journey towards a more tender, courageous existence." The narrative of these intertwined lives unfolded against the grand stage of historical events. The rumble of distant armies, the negotiations in opulent government chambers, and the furtive exchanges in moonlit alleyways all served as a reminder that every era is a mosaic of countless human stories. In one particularly stirring moment, as dusk settled upon a grand boulevard and the echoes of marching soldiers mingled with the soft strains of a violin played on a street corner, Edward and Arthur found themselves reflecting on the beauty of change. "We live in times of profound transformation," Edward noted, pausing to gaze at the sky painted with the last blush of sunset, where every heartbeat is imbued with the potential to rewrite history. Arthur, his eyes alight with an unspoken promise, replied, "And it is in our willingness to embrace both the light and the shadow that we find the true measure of our destiny." In the ensuing days, as the political tensions simmered and the promise of renewal beckoned, our ensemble of heroes came together for one final, transformative endeavor. In the grand hall of an ancient estate, its soaring arches and intricate frescoes bearing silent witness to centuries of human triumph and tragedy, they gathered not as representatives of divided factions, but as kindred spirits united by a common vision. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and a sense of shared possibility as each voice contributed to a conversation that sought to bridge the fissures of the past with the potential for a luminous future. In each act of courage, every spoken word of compassion, "We are building a legacy that will outlast the transience of time," declared Elena, her voice resonating with the clarity of a bell tolling in the stillness of dawn. Her proclamation was met by a chorus of hopeful affirmations, a promise by all present that the world could be remade through cooperation, understanding, and the unwavering belief in the goodness of humankind. Even as night slowly embraced the great hall, and the flickering candles cast gentle shadows upon weathered stone, the gathering lingered in a state of quiet reflection. Outside, the city of Ardennes shuddered with the excitement of imminent change, its ancient streets echoing with the murmurs of revolution and tender assurances of repair. In that silent communion, it seemed as though the spirit of Europe itself had found its voice, a voice that would carry the promise of hope forward into uncharted tomorrows. Thus, the extraordinary lives of Arthur, Elena, Jonathan, Margaret, Edward, Samuel, and Isabella interwove into a rich tapestry, a narrative where historical turbulence was tempered by the relentless pursuit of light, where individual destinies merged into a collective movement, and where every act of kindness contributed to the rebirth of a continent. Their journeys, filled with moments of profound introspection, joyful celebration, and even sorrow, underscored the eternal truth that in the face of adversity, the human spirit can flourish if allowed the room to dream. And so, as the first rays of a new dawn broke over a reimagined Europe, these resilient souls stepped forward into the light of possibility, forever etched in the annals of an era where even the deepest shadows gave way to the brilliance of hope. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to my channel and check out the description to find out how you can support my work.